Welcome to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno.
Is it possible that UFOs are not extraterrestrial? Has the government or somebody already weaponized the paranormal? With 2012 as the end of the world long gone, that sort of craze, where, if anywhere, are we headed?
Hey there, and welcome to the 555th edition of Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno. I am Ben, and those strange questions came from my co-host and partner in the paranormal, my dad. And this evening, we are very pleased to have right here in our little studio one of the first and greatest UFO researchers of all time, and an aficionado of all things paranormal as well. And we welcome your calls this evening. It's 401-766-1240 locally, or from anywhere in the U.S. or Canada, 800-449-1240.
Timothy Green Beckley is a pioneer in paranormal research. He is an author, publisher, and producer. Mr. UFO, as he is known, is probably the longest-standing and most famous of all UFO investigators. He says that the paranormal has been part of his life since childhood. He reports having his first out-of-body experience at the age of 6 and saw his first 3 UFOs at the age of 10. In the early 1970s, he founded the UFO Investigators League, and over the years has written over 30 books on everything from rock music to the secret Majestic 12 UFO papers. Inner Light Global Communications, Conspiracy Journal, Abelard, and other names are imprints of Tim's publishing company. He keeps the rarest and most unique books on the subjects of conspiracies, UFOs, aliens, giants, Bigfoot, etc. in print and available for all researchers. We have several of them in front of us right now. His works are the source material for a number of History Channel shows on UFOs, aliens, Men in Black, Ancient Aliens, and much more. He is the author of Mystery of the Men in Black, the UFO Silencers, with an intro by the late, great John Keel. His websites include www.hiddenmysteries.com, TeslaSecretLab.com, and ConspiracyJournal.com. And you said that his Hidden Mysteries was not...
No, that's not my... that was my printer's...
I'm sorry. I thought I took this out of here.
That's okay. But, hey, I got a great deal here. We just started our own paranormal channel on YouTube. So it's free. I think there's about a dozen interviews up there posted. I take my little camera with me as I travel around the country, and I interview some fabulous people who've had experiences, people who claim they've seen entities, got aboard UFOs. It's all wild and woolly, and of course it's up to the viewer or the listener to decide. But you can go over to YouTube. It's Mr. UFO's Secret Files. And there's some really good interviews. In fact, our last show was posted up there, and got some great stuff. Check Tom Dongo out and Ted Phillips. I think 2 of the best interviews up there. And it's live, and I take my little camera with me, and it's not Hollywood. But it's unbalanced, unfair, and uncensored.
There we are.
and unedited.
Well, there's the little camera right now, and we'll have to keep it edited tonight because we're FCC regulated. So.
Well, that's all right. You've got the thing that mutes the mic.
Actually, we don't.
No, we do not have one of those.
Should have said that to the callers.
Well, in any case, now we know. So, Tim Beckley, welcome back to Behind the Paranormal.
This is my 3rd or 4th time on the show. I think.
Yes, I believe it's your 3rd or 4th.
It's like we're like family.
We are.
In fact, I'm moving in next week.
Oh, okay.
I'm taking Ben's room. He doesn't know it yet.
Okay.
It's okay. You can have it.
You'll have to bring in the excavator yourself. But anyway,
so let's start with a little something local. Local interest to our audience here in Woonsocket. The late, great Joe Ferriere hosted the afternoon talk show here on ON 1240 for 50 years, and he was on before us some weeks as well. And he was a prominent UFO researcher in the 1960s. Mm-hmm. How and when did you get to know Joe?
Well, when I was a teenager, I put out a newsletter. I've published, I don't know how many newsletters, magazines, edited stuff on the newsstand. I mean, I guess that's been my kind of line of work, magazine packager and book publisher, not just for myself, but for other people. Anyway, when I was a teen, there were a lot of teenagers that were interested in the field. In fact, some of them are still around, retired. They're all kind of we were teenage ufologists, now we're senior citizen ufologists. How the years do go by. But I put out a little mimeograph magazine called the Interplanetary News Service Report. And Joe had a publication. Now, later on, he put out a pretty slick magazine called Probe, but he had another little magazine that he was also mimeographing. He had a partner, his name was Armand Leprade, who lived around here, I guess, and we used to exchange newsletters. People disappearing. I remember he had an article about a woman who went out to take the clothes off her clothesline. She was never seen again.
Around here?
I don't remember. I mean, I could lie and say yes, but that's 50 years ago, and I don't know. Maybe she'll appear in the studio tonight with the dirty laundry, or maybe clean laundry. I'm not sure, but anyway, so we exchanged magazines, and in those days, people actually corresponded. We wrote letters on terrible typewriters. Looking back at them, I don't know how anybody could read this stuff on onion skin paper, which is like the thinnest paper in the world.
I remember that.
But you could make 6 or 7 copies. And then you would send the carbons to other people so you could share in the correspondence. That was the kind of like an internet group would be today, or
That's
even
right.
an email. And then it got to the point where we were sending not cassette tapes. They were reel-to-reel tapes, small ones. We had a little portable reel-to-reel. We'd send that around, and so I guess I talked to Joe a few times on the telephone, and we exchanged the magazines. And then I guess he invited me up to do the show that he was the host on. And so this is actually, I don't know how many, almost 50 years. I don't remember exact date. But if anybody there out in listener land has an old copy of the midnight newspaper, which was the Globe, that turned into the Globe that's sold in the supermarket.
Not the Boston Globe.
No.
Yeah.
This is the yellow journalism, the tabloid, yes. And in those days, it was a lot stranger than it is now. Anyway, I remember the headline story was I had investigated the sightings made by astronauts, UFO sightings. Long time ago. And for some reason, I guess the paper asked me to send in a photograph to use with the article, and I had one. I guess that Joe had sent me sitting here at the microphone, not the same location for the studio, but he and I were in the studio, and he was interviewing me. Well, I don't know how young I was. I wish I could find a photograph. I had crew cut, black horn-rimmed glasses, and the acne still showed on my face. So I must have been, 18 years old in the photograph. So that had to be pushing 50 years ago, between 47 and 50 years ago. And then Joe and I stayed in touch, but not all that, much. He had his career. He did publish a magazine later on. He took some incredible UFO photographs. Now, if you go to the internet and you type in Joseph, I believe his middle initial was L, Ferriere, you'll get some really wild photographs. I mean, I think that these things were real, and I saw photographs that he showed me, and I have somewhere in my huge files, if I ever find anything, photographs that, there was one that showed a cigar-shaped mothership in the sky surrounded by 5 of these kind of bell-shaped craft, scout craft or something.
Yeah, it was taken, I believe, in Cumberland, Rhode Island. Just down the
this
road.
one looked like it was taken outside his window. There were, I don't know, there are some people who seem to have the knack of attracting UFOs and being able to photograph them.
That is a strange thing.
Okay, there's another fellow who's deceased now as well, by the name of Paul Villa, who was from New Mexico. And he had these things, they landed in they were landing outside his trailer where he lived. Now, he had a lot of stuff, and this is also on the internet. In fact, we published a book of his photographs. And you can say, well, maybe he tossed something in the sky and photographed it. But, the weirdest thing is he's got this dome-shaped craft there. Looks like it's got portholes around it. And in the sky are these 3 or 4 metallic balls. I mean, is he a juggler? He did all this stuff at the same time. And the same for Joe. I mean, I didn't know Joe that well. I don't think he was a hoaxer. And how do you get a mothership in 5 scout craft into the sky? And it doesn't look like it was. I know a little bit about photography. It doesn't look like it was done in a dark room. And this is, of course, long before Photoshop and the internet and anything else.
I agree.
So, and he was on the air here. You did interview him once. I believe it's in your archives, where he tells some bizarre stories about this couple. He got into the back of their automobile. I guess he was a kid and he was hitchhiking or something.
From Hartford back to
and there were these weird blinking black boxes in the back of the car. And he asked him, well, this is before Homeland Security, or today you stop and call 911 or something. So he asked them what they were doing with this, and he said the couple said, well, we really can't talk about it, but it's for something to the effect for the security or the benefit of your planet. So he must have known, even at whatever young age, that there was something peculiar about this couple, because why would somebody say something like that? I mean, we weren't even into kind of like UFO motif today. Now, if some New Ager said something like that, he wouldn't really
you wouldn't think twice
about it.
Right.
But what were those black boxes? Who was this couple? And why would you make up a story like that? I don't know. And he had some other. He took these photographs, and then there was another gentleman. I guess maybe they were friends. I'm not even sure what their relationship was. There was another fellow by the name of Harold Trudell, who I guess lived in the area here, who also is credited for taking some of the photographs. But I see some of them are credited to Joe on one website, and some of them are credited to Harold on the other. So I'm not sure which is what. Now, my former associate, Harold Sulkin, who we also shared an apartment in New York for a couple of years, actually co-published this magazine with Joe called Probe. But they didn't really know too much about distribution, and I think there was only a couple of issues printed. But they got some pretty fantastic photographs in there. I think I'm going to do a book on UFO contactee repeaters, the people that take UFO photographs all the time, because it's outside of Joe and Paul Villa. I forget about Billy Meyer. I don't believe his pictures. But there are a lot of other people that have had this talent, and they never get any credit because nobody really cares. There was a woman who lived up in New Hampshire by the name of Stella Lansing. Now, you give this woman an 8mm camera, and you take the film out and you project it, and there were faces on there, and there were clocks, and all kinds of weird things that were going on. You give her any kind of camera, and something strange was happening. And of course, the scientists, just like today, that it's fake and it's phony, this light getting into the camera and this and that. Well, it wasn't. I mean, it's just she was doing something strange. I think now most of this is mental. I don't mean mental in the sense that they're off the wall or whack-a-ding-hoy or anything like that. It's a psychic thing. Some people have the ability to bring in the phenomena, and weird things happen around them, and I'm sure it's the same way you guys know in the paranormal.
The Ted Sirios.
Yeah, Ted Sirios.
Yeah, I knew him.
He had the eyepiece.
Yeah, he could actually look into the lens of a camera, or even a pack of film that wasn't even in a camera, and what he was thinking would appear, and I saw him do it.
Yeah, well, this is the same. Stella Lansing could do the same thing, too. I think it got to the point where she didn't even have to put the film in the camera. Exactly. Well, now, even Betty Hill, I know during the
Kathy Martin's aunt.
Well, Betty used to go out.
Barney Hill case.
Yeah, Betty used to go out at night with her camera and see all kinds of strange things in the sky. But people say, "Oh, she's just seeing airplanes, and she wants to believe, or they're coming back and stuff." Well, I don't know. I knew Betty somewhat. I mean, I talked to her on the phone a couple of times, and of course met her and all. But I don't know. There just seem to be some people who attract paranormal phenomena. Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking of Jerry Warner too, Ben. Jerry, now he's not a UFO photographer, but he gets these strange cloud, almost like smoke art.
Yes.
And I've looked at that very closely, and we've had him on the show, and it seems to me to be legitimate. Certain people, as you say, do tend to attract certain sorts of photographic evidence.
Okay, now here's a question for you. Is it the people that are attracting it, or is it because they're in some window area or some area that's prone to have paranormal? I'm thinking of a couple of places. On YouTube, the Mr. UFO Secret Files, there's an interview that I did with Tom Dongo in Sedona. Now, Tom has a huge scrapbook. It's bigger than any of the books that I bought in today to give you guys, and it's all filled with color photographs of orbs. But we're not talking about light specks or what do you call it? The raindrops on the film or something. No, no, we're talking about things going this way, going that way, different colors and all. And most of his orbs were taken on this place called the Bradshaw Ranch, which was in Sedona. It was bought out by the government. It was bought out by the government to. I think they were going to make it into something for children. Exactly remember, but they bought it out and they've never used it. And of course now there's no trespassing signs all over the place, but people do manage to sneak in because the wires are down and the fence is rotted and stuff like that. But Tom has even done a couple of books just with all these photographs of all these weird lights. And, of course, then you got the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, which is fairly famous.
Yeah, we're in Central Connecticut now. We've been working at.
Which one, though?
Well, we call it Connecticut Skinwalker Ranch.
Is that right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You have to come to Exeter to hear
I was just going to say, I haven't done a real good in-person paranormal investigation.
We'll talk about that later on.
Right, But there's another place, Black Forest in Colorado, where this fellow lives on this property. This has been on, I think it's on Strange Universe, or maybe it was Sightings. Has a cabin, lives in the in the forest. A very nice log cabin. I mean, expensive, nice log cabin. And all these weird lights and stuff are seen coming out of the trees, coming out of mirrors in the house. In fact, he's had several researchers, and I think a local politician, one of the senators, were there, and there's writing that it sounds more like a poltergeist than a UFO thing.
That's it.
But he blames it on the CIA and mind control. He thinks that the government has some sort of underground or base or something going on there.
Another story.
He's seen. He claims he's seen, like guys dressed in black or military ops uniforms going into the barn, the doghouse or something there. So that's how he explains it. But it kind of all looks the same. Maybe they can duplicate the phenomenon, or maybe they're out there investigating it and trying to chase him off the land or something.
It's like a Scooby-Doo kind of thing.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you, Tim, one thing Joe told us and several times, and I believe you mentioned it on that show, where he said that he had said things that he'd never said publicly.
That's right, yes.
Show, is that this all kind of started to get to him.
Yes.
And he said he wanted his life to go back to normal, so he gave it all up, which is why it's mostly the old-timers in the field who have heard of Joe. A lot of the younger ones haven't. And he said he gave it up. Gave up the magazine, Probe magazine, all that stuff, and his life went back to normal.
Well,
now, how come people like you and I? Well, I can't say I have a normal life, but I don't know about you.
Well, my life is pretty abstract.
Maybe you get used to it.
I would say I've never been. I think we discussed this before. I'm not much on authority. I've always been my own, my renegade self. Ever since I was a teenager. I've never done.
Don't fit the mold.
No. I'm not another brick in the wall.
Yeah.
My brick is crumbled, I'm afraid.
Okay. But I always thought that was an interesting comment.
But I don't see. I never. When I was growing up and where I lived, I never tried to get attention drawn to me like in the local newspaper or something like that. 50 miles away was fine. If I went to Cleveland or something, you could put me on the front page, but not, on the local newspaper, because I had to deal with people, that may. But today, first of all, I don't care, and I don't think the subject has that much of a stigma as it maybe used to. But again, perhaps on where what community it is that you live in. I know. Geez, I remember one time I had graduated from school many, many years before, and I ran into my English teacher in the street. And I was not a very good student. In fact, when it came to English, I just barely passed, but I published 200 books, so I guess that kind of worked out. Because he never told me you can hire a proofreader. Well, anyway, he came up to me on the street and he said, I understand you're a writer and publisher. Can you get me published?
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, okay, but you know what I told him, and I've told a lot of people this? mine is a very small niche market here. I've tried other things. I've written a lot of music books. I met Jimi Hendrix. I knew his chauffeur pretty good. John Lennon came to one of my rock and roll concerts. And anytime I tried to deviate and get into something else, the books would stack up in the garage. It just wasn't what I was doing, and I didn't have the same distributors who handle Strange Saga, T-Lop Sync Rampa are not the same ones that are going to sell music books. In fact, they would turn down. I wouldn't even offer it to them because they just isn't gonna.
Well, now, I had another question here. You're one of the few people who has been at this really since almost the beginning.
I consider myself second generation.
Second generation, right.
Jim Moseley, Gray Barker,
sure.
They would have been first generation. Anybody who was in it from 1945 on, which are very few. I guess Stanton would go back a few years.
Well, I always joke with him. He started in UFO research when I was in kindergarten. 1957, 1958.
Okay, so he would have been back a little bit before, but I got into it. I think the first magazine I bought Fate magazine on the newsstand. It was 35 cents in those days.
Dear old Fate.
It had 30 pages of advertising. I mean, magazines were the internet of the day, and you got paid for articles, and you had to pay for ads. And today it's all a trade out or nothing at all or something,
Yeah, right.
But anyway, so I bought Fate magazine, and then I think in 1957, I would have been 10 years old. There was a magazine on the newsstand. I think it was the same people who put out Confidential magazine, which had all the scandals in it. Of course, it was a garish red and yellow cover, and this one was something like True Space Mysteries. And I still have a copy of it. It's kind of folded in half from the turning into dust after all these years, but it had actually some of the same UFO photographs that they show today, because there aren't really all that many pictures. And I read that magazine over and over, and then I went and I took every book that I could find in the library and read it. In those days, it would have been like Major Keyhoe. When I was in the 4th grade, and this gets back to my Synchronicities, and I'm not sure whether I told this on the air before, but when I was in the 4th grade, I read a book by Gray Barker called They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers. It was the original book on the Men in Black, told about how this Connecticut researcher, Albert K. Bender, had been visited by these 3 men with black fedoras and trench coats and glasses and whatever, and they silenced him and warned him never to talk about UFOs again, and he suspended publication of his magazine Space World. So anyway, I wrote this review of this book when I was in the 4th grade. I remember it was in red pen. I think I have it there somewhere on lined notebook paper, and I got a B+. Well, heaven forbid for me to get a B+ on anything was a miracle in those days. Well, little did I know that my first 3 books would be published by Gray Barker, and that when he passed away, I went and I bought the last 50 hardcover copies of They Knew Too Much About Flying Saucers, which was the book that I did the book report on when I was in the 4th grade. So I guess that's a kind of a synchronicity.
Something
but
like that. Yeah,
I always said that when I grew up, I wanted to be like Jim Moseley and Gray Barker, and some people poo-poo me to this day for that. But
well, there you go. But
they have a controversial, I guess, background.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How has UFO research changed since those days? I mean, you know a lot of the current people, Peter Robbins, a lot of people we know. So,
well, I'm not sure that it has. To be honest,
in other words, it's gotten nowhere.
Well, yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Well, any of this. I read my Synchronicities here, and I have a few more that I marked down that have happened since I was on the show last, and. To me, most of this, it's for the person that's involved in it. A person has a UFO experience or has a sighting, or maybe even an abduction experience. And what does it mean to the person that lives down the block? I mean, how do you prove, these people are yelling for disclosure. Well, you either believe it or you don't believe it. What do you care what the government tells you about aliens anyway? I mean, to me, it just doesn't seem, what's the difference? It's like telling you that the government should come out and say that God exists, if you don't believe in God, you're never going to believe in God, whether the government tells you or not. And the same thing with aliens and UFOs. If they tell you that they're from Alpha Centauri, they're probably lying anyway, because they do about everything else. And not only that, maybe they don't know too much more than we do. Even if they have wreckage and a couple of bodies, does it got a name tag on it?
Mm-hmm.
What does it say? What can they tell by dissecting or doing an autopsy on an alien? It's not human. Doesn't tell you whether he comes from another planet. Doesn't tell you whether he's got a base underground. Doesn't tell you much of anything that I know of. And in fact, even if the Roswell crash did take place, and I think it was a government experiment myself, they've supposedly had this thing that has the writing on it, but nobody can decipher the writing. And maybe the writing just says like "Eat at Joe's" or something. Maybe it's a commercial. Who the heck knows?
Commercial.
So even it's like if you went somewhere and you found the wreckage to a boat or something. Let's say that a vessel that had sank 100 years ago. What can you tell by looking at it, really? Maybe if you go deep down, you might, because you can understand the language or something, but a craft from some other planet, what is it? It's a piece of space debris.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of commercials, it's time for our bottom of the hour break. And you're listening to Behind the Paranormal with Paul and Ben Eno, and this evening with Tim Beckley as well, on WOON 1240 in New England's beautiful Blackstone River Valley, and we will be right back.
Everything you know is
Oh, hey. Hello.
You can't get away from it.
Yeah, right? Shameless self.
Hey, I do all the time. The other way.
The paranormal is not what you think it is.
We'll go on later, come over.
No.
We have an agent now.
I don't trust people who do that.
Well, I've had 2 agents in my life, and you know what really feels
Before we get back to our guest and our fascinating discussion, I just wanted to remind you of several of the charities Ben and I have adopted, including USACares.org, does great things financially for our veterans, and Canadian Veterans Advocacy for our neighbors to the north. Also, Youth Mentoring Connection, or YMC, in Los Angeles, doing amazing things for at-risk youth using ancient wisdom. Check that out at youthmentoring.org. Tony LaRae has been on our show doing great things, so check that out, please. So let's get back to our conversation with the great Timothy Green Beckley, who is certainly one of the original, or at least second generation, as he said.
Didn't you say it was immortal or something like that?
Yes. We are not stingy in our praise. So, all right.
The omnipresent Tim Beckley.
Yes, indeed. Conterminous with all space.
Count Saint Germain, the man who lives forever. Yes.
Well, you do not look your age. I must say that.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
A lot of good that does me, but that's.
So we've talked a little bit about how UFO research maybe has not changed. Have UFOs themselves changed? I'm thinking of Ted Phillips and some of his interpretations of the most modern manifestations.
Here's how it changed in a sense. When I was growing up, I was a teenager. There probably were at least a dozen teenage UFO groups. There was Rick Hilberg, he's still active. Ed Beeble, who I see every once in a while, he lives out in Tucson. Dale Reddick, who I had one of my synchronicities with by showing up around with the thing about Alan Vaughn and the restaurant where I was in San Francisco and he walked through the door and he didn't even know I was in town and vice versa. I'd just been talking about him 5 minutes before he passed away. Anyway, so there were all these active teenage UFO groups, and we all shared information. Today, there are no, as far as I know, teenage UFO groups. Of course, I don't know who's running all these internet sites and stuff. Maybe
they're all out ghost hunting at this point.
Yeah, maybe.
But I think that's how it's changed. And of course, everybody was now in those days. Everybody thought, I believe that UFOs were interplanetary. I mean, that's kind of everybody had read the books by Major Donald E. Kehoe and Edward Ruppelt, and they said, UFOs were from outer space. They had this advanced technology thousands of years ahead of us. Well, it ain't so. I guess a lot of us have split camps here, where people like Stanton Friedman are still into the nuts and bolts, and people like myself and a lot of others are just into the nuts stuff. I mean, I don't know. I've become to believe there may be a few hardcore UFOs here, but where do they come and where do they go and what are they doing? I mean, they just appear in the sky for Joe Ferriere and then they disappear. Where do they go to? Mm-hmm. And why? I mean, it doesn't seem Okay, they don't have to follow our plan where we would send an astronaut to the moon and go out and pick up some soil or, plant the American flag. I mean, I don't expect them to, but there's got to be some rhyme or reason behind it. And there's no rhyme or reason for 50 or 100 or 1,000 years. They've been here all the time.
Or human rhyme or reason.
Huh?
Or human rhyme or reason.
That's correct. That's the whole key here. We expect them to behave pretty much the way we would behave.
Yes,
but they're not operating. See, to me, they're not operating on that same mindset. In fact, I don't know as if they have a brain or a mind like we think of it.
Yeah,
they are able to communicate through synchronicities. I think maybe through crop circles, if some of those are legitimate, by coming into your dreams, maybe by making you think that you were abducted. Maybe you were. I don't know, but. There's no even for all these abductions. What's the rhyme or purpose of it? I can't go as far as the fellow there in Pennsylvania. I can't even think of his name. That's a historian on the abductions and stuff. Anyway, he
I can't either.
Yeah, me either. I'm blanking.
Yeah, blanking out. Okay. See, the aliens have blanked out our mind.
Yeah, see, and Ben, you're not even old.
No. I feel like
it starts young. Anyway. So I don't know what's the purpose. They see a dire threat. Well, if the aliens wanted to take us over, either physically they could have done that. If they wanted to take us over, mentally, they could have done that too, and maybe they have on some cases. We've written articles and chapters in our book on UFO possessions and stuff, but they don't seem to have a real rhyme or reason. Even Whitley Strieber, who's had some incredible experiences, he changes his opinion every time he has a new book out, and that's kind of what I do too. I mean, to be honest with you, because you would figure after 50 years you wouldn't be caught in the same rut that you can't say. Now, Ted Phillips is another one. He started out with the physical trace cases, and he doesn't go in for I think too much of the interplanetary ships now.
No, not now.
Yeah,
no.
We've had him the interview that I did with him. This is on the YouTube. Of course, now his big thing was he was going to, I believe, Hungary to investigate this thing that's in the cave. I call him Iron Man or something that's down there. But so far he hasn't gotten to do it. I guess he's had some.
Well, he's tied up with Marley Woods.
Well, he hasn't. I don't think he's been up to date on that either. The Marley Woods isn't that unusual. These ghost lights or spook lights, they've been all over the place. I'm surprised they don't have them up here somewhere.
No, there are a few. Well, I think there's the East Coast. The Brown Mountain Lights are famous.
Oh yeah, I've been down there. Surely Joshua. Joshua Warren, who's a good friend.
Oh
of
yeah,
mine.
yeah. So you've made a nice transition, Tim, into synchronicities.
Yes.
So and we've had some of our most fascinating conversations on that subject. So what is a synchronicity for those who didn't hear your last show in August?
Okay. Well, now here, for example, here's a couple of things that have happened since I last talked to you. Sometimes late at night, I go into a pizza place right across the street from the Empire State Building.
So you live in Manhattan.
Yeah. They have the doors that open, and usually I go in and I read my newspaper or my latest Fate magazine or something like that, And so I'm sitting there. I had the 14 Times, and it was in an envelope, like a Federal Express or UPS envelope. And the place was pretty crowded. And there was a couple, the guy was sitting next to me, and there was a girl across from me. I guess they looked like they were in their late teens, early 20s. So the girl gets up, and she says, "Are you Timothy Beckley?" And at first I was ready to sign autographs and put my hand out. And I said, well, I kind of mumbled, well, how do you know that? She said, "Oh, I saw the name on your on the envelope here, and my boyfriend's name is Timothy, and my name is Becky." Okay, now, I thought about it, and I said, well, that isn't that much of a synchronicity. But you know what the synchronicity is? Why would she ask me that unless somebody told her that I was into synchronicities? You see what I'm saying? It's so bizarre that's the important part of it, not that she thought that there was some rationalization or coincidence there. It's that she didn't ask the guy next to me across the way or anything. It's me who's on all these shows talking about it, and she picks me to ask this question. Also, a couple of weeks ago, my friend April had to go to New Jersey. She lives in Manhattan. to see her dentist. He moved out of Park Avenue and went to Passaic or something like that. She's had some problem with her teeth. She's had braces, orthodontic work, is that what it's called? Okay, so she wanted me. She didn't know exactly where the place was, so she wanted me to go with her on the bus to make sure that she got there. Okay. When she got to the office, we're setting with the rest of the patients, and there's two. I guess it's Saturday, so it's a dental day for kids. I never seen more kids anxious to have their teeth examined, and certainly not me. But okay, they had some little toys and stuff for kids to play with in the dentist office. So the kids pick up an abacus. Now I don't even know if a lot of people know what an abacus is. It's the old Chinese calculator. Basically, where you push the buttons across and you keep count on it. But I don't think anybody uses it, but maybe kids do in kindergarten because they seem to be playing with it and knew what it was. Okay, so I was I had my telephone with me, and I told April, I said, I'm going to look up abacus to find out what the row of beads and all mean. Okay, so I type in abacus, and it gives me some information. And then at the bottom of the screen, it says something about Microsoft, and then under that, other things you may be interested in. And it says, it's spelled out on the phone, bottom teeth braces, bottom teeth hurt. On the bottom of the smartphone, underneath all this other information about the abacus. No reason for it to be there
that is strange.
whatsoever.
That's pretty strange.
Yeah.
I mean, the list goes on and on. Oh, last time I think I mentioned how sometimes I'm able to meet people that I haven't seen for years by just going to a particular location or a town. Okay, there's one that I didn't talk about. There's a fellow by the name of George Fawcett. He was one of the first generations of UFO researchers, and he had an incredible collection of UFO photographs and sightings and all. When I first met him, when I was a kid, he lived in Pennsylvania, and he ran the New Jersey, Pennsylvania UFO, whatever it was. And I visited his home a couple of times, and we stayed in touch, corresponded. He'd come out with some little newsletter, and he'd send it, and I'd publish it in the magazine. Okay, I hadn't seen him in years. I'm on the plane, and the plane, there's a stopover in St. Louis. Okay, so I get off the plane, and I go to the restaurant or the diner or whatever's in the airport to get a bite to eat and something to, a beer or something to drink, because it's probably a 2-hour wait. So I get into the restaurant, and lo and behold, who is sitting at the table but George Fawcett, who I hadn't seen in I don't know, maybe 20 years or something like that. But I figure, he's on his way to the same MUFON conference in Denver, and we've both stopped. That's not too much of a synchronicity. So I said, George, you're going to the MUFON conference? He said, no, I didn't even know there's a MUFON conference. I'm going to Roswell to see about donating my library to them. So here's a guy I meet in the airport, 2,000 miles away from where I live, and another 2,000 miles away from where he lives, and we're just both going about our business. We hadn't seen each other in 20 years, and we said hi, and a
lot of people wonder, is there something more behind this than just coincidence? I mean, some of these things are just so bizarre.
Behind the paranormal.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That there would be, there was one fellow, I don't know, he's a good friend of mine, and he lives over here in Smithfield, Rhode Island, and he was in Scotland on the Isle of Skye, middle of nowhere. Mm. He and his wife are going to have dinner at this little pub with 4 seats in it, middle of some little lane that wasn't even paved, and he walked in there, and all of a sudden he heard, "Hey, Jack." And it was a guy from Smithfield, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
And I mean, I looked that up. It's like 20 million to 1.
Yes.
The chances of that.
Well, it's going to happen every once in a blue moon. I mean, it's okay. And you can say, but to have it happening repeatedly, time and time again. Now, there's a fellow, he's deceased, by the name of John C. Lilly. John C. Lilly was a scientist. He did communications with dolphins. I guess that's what he's best known for. But he had so many synchronicities in his life that he thought that there was actually a governing board. He called it ECCO, Earth Coincidence Control Office. And he believed that these coincidences were really put in front of people to kind of guide them and lead them in their lives towards maybe a certain destiny or something like that. I think that there's somebody controlling some of this. I mean, it can't be random. Maybe it could prove that there's a God, but I'm not an atheist, but I'm not a believer either. It could prove we're part of somebody's matrix, and this could be the engineers at some giant computer board, and this is they're playing Nintendo with us. I mean, I don't know what it proves. Now, maybe some people have synchronicities that tell them to play the certain slot machine, or the win the race at the. I haven't had anything as monumental as that, but it certainly proved to me that there is some sort of outside intelligence. I don't believe that. I mean, the list is getting longer and longer, that it could possibly be that random. And why do they seemingly pick some people, like myself, and not other people? Or maybe they do, and other people just kind of brush it off or don't notice it because they're not interested in it.
Yeah. Well, out of the looking at, because maybe
it's given me a second career.
Oh, yeah.
Well, yeah, because now I after all these years, I kind of didn't want to do any talk shows anymore because I got tired talking about my 3 UFO sightings and UFO personalities and stuff. So now I got something else. Of course, I've been into the paranormal. My grandfather on my father's side of the family saw a headless horseman.
Really?
My life was saved by.
I can't say I've ever had that experience.
Yeah. My life might have been saved by a guardian angel or something when I was
mine
3
was
years
twice.
old. Yeah. Okay. So I know that there is something out there besides us. Maybe they're trying to communicate with us, just like we're trying to communicate with them, but maybe we're using the wrong language. You must be familiar with the Enochian language of John Dee.
That was our ancestor. Not Joe. I'm joking.
Good one.
Okay, all right.
At that distance in time, everybody's ancestor.
Yeah. Right. Okay, but anyway, they came up with a language to speak with the angels, which if you ever tried it, it's pretty incomprehensible. I'm sorry. Some people have spent their whole lifetime trying to figure out the Enochian language and stuff like that. And it's like a giant decoder. If you've ever seen it, it's like one layer on top of another layer, and you got to turn this thing one way and to come up with a meaning to say. It's pretty strange, but people have long thought that there's a way to connect with the angels or with some of this outside. Now, we tried burning candles and levitating tables during the spiritualist movement, but I'm not sure that really told us too much either. Maybe some of the phenomena was real, and maybe a lot of it wasn't. It's kind of hard to say, but we're trying to talk to them, but maybe they're being more successful in communicating with us, but we don't know what language they're using.
Well, maybe not. Well, of course, the readers, speaking as a writer, the listeners know that we rely a lot on the multiverse ideas, rightly or wrongly, and I would tend to look toward that. Perhaps a term people might understand would be the collective unconscious that Jung would use. And we have all sorts of parallel lives we're living, according to this anyway, that's all part of us. And really, ultimately, we're all part of each other. And I think that might be the highway or the network or the matrix, perhaps, by which these coincidences may occur, these synchronicities. So that's
I don't know. I think yes, maybe in some cases, but it has to go beyond that. I don't know. It just seems like
there's some kind of control behind it.
There's somebody trying to tickle our funny bone, and think that they're being playful with us.
There is a sense of humor behind it.
Yeah.
One thinks of the Greeks and Romans and believing that the gods actually literally played with us as just for their own entertainment.
Well, Charles Fort thought that we were like chess pieces, in some big game, and we were being controlled, or somebody's manipulating us. I wouldn't say that that's impossible, but I don't want to get too paranoid about it. I mean,
right? Or too anthropomorphic either. Yeah. Well, Charles Fort wrote twice about Woonsocket, as a matter of fact.
Is that right?
Yeah, Charles Fort was a renowned chronicler of odd phenomena.
He was.
And he spent a great deal of time in the New York Public Library.
He did. Well, he was born in England.
Yes.
But then he moved to the United States. You know,
Well, he knew you were going to live in New York someday, so he wanted to be there, too.
Well, that's possibly true. You know, he's buried in the rural cemetery outside of Albany. And there have been some mysterious things going on up there. There's a lady that I know. I call her the MIB lady, who lives outside of Albany, and we've gone up there. And there's one of the presidents is buried there. And I can't think of who it is.
Franklin Pierce, I think.
Oh, yeah. So,
I'm maybe
okay.
wrong.
But anyway, there's a reflection pool there, and sometimes these black cars show up and they circle the reflector pool and disappear. Now, I'm wondering if the president that's buried there wasn't a member of some secret society or something like that.
Well, black cars in a cemetery aren't too unusual, but disappearing is.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, in fact, then they've had a couple that have been seen in their pajamas flying over the tombstones at night.
Well, at least
I
they're
think
in
they
their
should be
pajamas.
dressed more appropriately when they go there.
Yeah.
And then dogs with like red eyes and things like that. And
Wow.
then the cars that disappeared, they'll go down the lanes and never come out again. And when they pass people who are sitting in the driver's seat, they won't hear any it's all gravel, but they won't hear any sounds or anything. It's all
Interesting.
Weird. But I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, not at all. And I hadn't heard of that case, but
Yeah.
no, that's all really all I was going to say about that. Was one
he wrote about
possibility?
He wrote about here.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, one was Marie Rose Farron, who is known locally as sort of still has a worldwide following as sort of a saint. Okay. She had the stigmata. This is supposed to be like the wounds of Christ and sort of thing. She lived over here on Asylum Street for a while.
That's appropriate.
Well, many have said that. And then on Providence Street as well. But, I never paid too much attention to that, except that I was in the cemetery one day over here, Precious Blood Cemetery, and on the Blackstone, Mass border, taking some photographs just because the Governor Poitier has a beautiful mausoleum. And I thought it might illustrate my talks. I don't usually get too much into cemeteries.
Isn't that something you get a better place when you die than when you're alive?
That sort of thing, exactly.
Right.
Certainly more expensive. But her grave was there. It's flat stone, very unusual, flowers around it. And her bio was there on a little card. I took 5 shots. The first one was completely black. And they became brighter as they went. Now, this was slide, Kodachrome, slide photography. And it was amazing. It looked as though there was light coming from the grave. And I have a sort of a control shot with the same shot of the clouds in the background. You can see at the same time and place. And I've never really been able to explain it, but I thought it was interesting. So he wrote about her. And I believe he also wrote about the Devil's Hole phenomenon.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, he
which
did.
supposedly is on the Woonsocket Hill here, right back where we live, where the wolves were coming out of the ground and demons and all this sort of thing, and some priest.
Well, I noticed the cat in your yard, his hair was standing on end, so maybe...
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, the neighbor cat who thinks he's ours, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it was the first one he met when Tim arrived. But, Charles Fort was aware of Woonsocket, and it is a very interesting place, and then, of course, with Joe Ferriere here, and a lot of UFO sightings, and still going on. We get calls when we do shows about that. So,
And it's coming close to that time of year, because since it is already October.
True.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So, interesting. So, tell us, before we run out of time here, which we're going to do soon, tell us about your websites again.
You promised me 2 hours. No,
Oh, no. There's the rumors. Maybe someday we'll go to that.
no that's
But,
my
but no, tell us about your websites again, your books,
Oh, my
where
goodness.
people can find out more.
Okay, well, if you want a free subscription, for some reason, my Synchronicity guys have told me to send out stuff for free. You could just email me at MrUFO8, MRUFO and the number 8 at hotmail.com. The website is conspiracyjournal.com. If you want lots of free interviews, my unbalanced, unedited, and uncensored series, go to YouTube. It's Mr. I don't have to spell everything. Come on, Mr. UFO's Secret Files. And you can find some pretty interesting interviews. I mean, people say, oh, he asks the right questions. And hopefully they give the right answers.
Well, you can't get the right answers if you ask the wrong question.
Yeah, that's
Right,
true,
right,
yes.
right.
So, Tim, tell us, we don't deal much with, in our last few minutes here, Ben will give us the signal.
Yes.
The whole conspiracy journal thing.
Yeah.
As I mentioned in the truck on the way over here, I've never been a conspiracy theorist,
Yes.
but I'm getting there. What do you believe about conspiracies? I mean, a lot of them seem kind of off the wall, but I don't know.
Okay. I'm not that much of a. First of all, the website is Tim Schwartz, associate of mine. He does the website, puts out a weekly newsletter that's emailed free to thousands of people. My conspiracies, of course, are more paranormal in nature. But we've talked about attempts to, of course, prevent people from getting information about free energy sources, Nikola Tesla and things. We've published a lot of books on that subject. I'm big. I probably am the publishers put out more books on the inner Earth and hollow Earth mysteries that the planet may. In fact, Willie Schreiber has just done a book called The Alien Hunter Underground or something.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it just came out, I guess, a couple of weeks ago.
Cool.
And, I've written about that for, 40 years or 50 years. That's one of the first books that I did was The Shaver Mystery in the Inner Earth, which is now the subterranean worlds inside Earth that you can get on Amazon. Or you can just go to Amazon and type in my name, Timothy Beckley, and 200 titles or something will appear because I always just put my name on it just as editor or something. So that's easier to just tell people to do it and order from Amazon or us or, borrow it from your library.
And there are links to your sites from our site, too, Behind the Paranormal.
Great.
And thank you, by the way, for coming all the way up from Gotham City to be with us.
But I had to do this because, like I said, I've done 1,000 shows over the years, radio and TV and all, and I haven't been in an actual radio studio in ages because most people just want you to do it on the telephone
or Skype.
Or Skype. I just put Skype on my tablet, but I still am a little shaky about using it.
We have to use it for overseas guests.
I have a land line. Oh, in fact, I do a show. I co-host the second Sunday of every month. It's On the Edge. TheOuterEdgeRadio.com, and next month, this month I'm having Larry Warren next Sunday night at midnight, and then the following second Sunday of November, I'm having Bruce on from China. And we're going to do that from mainland China.
Yeah.
I met him through a synchronicity as well. I had to get a refund or a credit on a travel ticket. This is back when there were actual travel tickets. So I had just gotten travel agents. I went to the office where I had gotten a ticket, and they said, go see that fellow over there, So I'm trying to explain to him about the ticket being all messed up, and he agrees with me, and we'll figure out how to give you some credit or your money back or something. And during the course of the conversation, while he's figuring out how to do this, what do you do, by the way? And I said, I lecture and write on the paranormal and mainly UFOs. And he says, that's interesting. Well, about 4 years later, I'm at a party given by a local contactee, and he's there. And I didn't recognize him at first, and we got to talking, and he said, I know you came into the travel agent to get a refund on your ticket. I said, well, what are you doing here? You didn't have that interest in something. He said, no, but after I talked to you, I went out and read a couple of things, and, I became interested. I met Mark and Phyllis. She worked for a local TV station there in New York, and he went on, along with a lady that I think he married later on, Marjorie Pye from Australia. They actually found pyramids. They uncovered pyramids in Australia. Well, we know now that there are pyramids all over the world, even though officially we're only told about the ones in Egypt and maybe Mexico, in Central America or something like that. But they're in Australia, they're in China, and gosh knows where else. And you can see them on the landscape. Well, that's a pyramid. Yeah, so what? No, it isn't. It's rubbish piled up.
Exactly.
There. So anyway, that was another synchronicity, and there it is.
It's amazing. It's full of them. Okay, Ben, let's take it away with the announcements.
Alrighty, so don't miss the second New England UFO Conference on October 17th and 18th at the City Hall in Leominster, Massachusetts. My dad and I will be the first speakers presenting our new program, Strange Connections, UFOs, Cryptids, and Ghosts, on Friday evening. Our speakers will include Stanton Friedman, Kathleen, our speakers, our other speakers, I should say, will include Stanton Friedman, Kathleen Martin, Reynolds from Forest Eyewitnesses, Steve LaPlume, and Mark D'Antonio, and a number of other people that you've heard on this show as well. And we hope to see you there. The information for the event is at neufoconference.vpweb.com.
And on Saturday, November 1st, Ben and I will be the featured speakers at the Autumn Paranormal event to benefit the New Hampshire SPCA. This will take place at the Lane Memorial Library, 2 Academy Avenue in Hampton, New Hampshire, from noon to 4. Our program, What's Really Behind the Paranormal.
And on the show website at behindtheparanormal.com, you can find nearly 600 free podcasts, as well as past shows from ON 1240 and our 4.5-year run on CBS Radio, along with special shows and podcasts as well. So also check out our main site at www.newenglandghosts.com, where there are case studies along with photos and articles by my dad.
Okay. And find my books on Amazon.com, etc., etc. But if you buy them directly at BehindTheParanormal.com, I will sign them for you. Big thrill. And you'll be able to keep all those podcasts free. And again, remember our charities we've mentioned, USA Cares, Canadian Veterans Advocacy, and others.
Alrighty, and next Monday, October 13th on ON 1240, we will have a complete coverage of the annual Autumn Fest here in northern Rhode Island. We'll be doing the closing ceremonies, and then we'll be doing a rebroadcast of the 532nd show from April 28th. A parapsychologist looks at ghost hunting with Dr. Kieran O'Keefe.
And we leave you this evening with a very wise thought from Oprah Winfrey of all people. Be thankful for what you have. You'll end up having more. If you concentrate on what you don't have, you will never, never have enough. I'm Paul Eno.
I'm Tim Beckley, and I'll be back in another 50 years.
Indeed. And I'm Ben Eno, and thanks for joining us on our great cosmic journey, and we shall see you next time.
Return to this radio frequency 167 hours from now for another edition of Behind the Paranormal.
So hopefully won't be 50. It'll be 167. No, I can't do that.
I don't.
What's going on?
Hold on. We take you to the city council meeting for Woonsocket, Rhode Island. I don't know if
Late or they early?
I think they're early. I don't know. I don't know if they're doing a special
They're
session.
lucky they can actually manage to get a meeting together.
They started, like, I saw them gathering, and I was just like, are they like